protection to end food insecurity. I would like to thank the African AFSP, GCAP, and the Rwandan Civil Society Platform for this opportunity and for organizing this event. I would also like to thank all our esteemed panelists for joining us, but also to everyone that is joining us this morning. I hope you all have your virtual coffees ready and that you would enjoy a very well-packed agenda that would see us airing from Botswana on social protection and food security in Botswana. Then would move to also hear social protection and food security, the socioeconomic recovery from a very distinguished panelist who would be talking to us from Rwanda. Of course, we'll also listen to the work the ILO is doing around social protection, and then we'll have a Q&A. Following the Q&A will then be conversations on best practices on how best we can mitigate the negative impacts of COVID-19 through social policy. And then we'll talk about the VNR focus, looking at Togo, then move from there to talk about the status of food insecurity in Africa. After that session also would have a question and answer, and then we'll listen to the draft outcome, which we would also need your wisdom and thoughts on. However, before we jump into the full conversation for today, let's do some virtual housekeeping. This event will be recorded. Please keep your microphone muted when not speaking so that we can reduce distracting background noise. For the Q&A session, please make use of the Q&A chat box, and we would like to hear from all of you, your questions, your insight, and also your wisdom. And also for us to get into the mood of using the chat box, can I ask that you please put your name, your organization, and where you're joining us from in the chat box so that we can get into the mood of being able to use the chat box. I know we're all familiar with that, but let's do that exercise now, and so that we can get familiar with ourselves. If you're using social media and you would like to share insights or learnings from today's conversations, these are the hashtags we'll recommend that you please use. Social protection to end hunger, social protection to #2, end hunger, and social protection now. Again, social protection #2, end hunger, one word, and also social protection now. I would ask that Angelique please put that in the chat box. The Twitter handles to tag would be the Africa platform, Africa_platform, Whiteband at RCSPR Rwanda. Again, at RCSP Rwanda. I would again crave the indulgence of Angelique to please help type this out in the chat box. So let's move straight to the conversations for today. Each of the panelists would have 7 minutes, and I'll be very strict with time. I'll be protecting my time very well. In doing that, at the dot of 5 minutes, I would, each time I introduce the speaker, I would go, my video would go off, and at the dot of 5 minutes, I would put on my speaker, meaning that I would put on my video, meaning that the speaker or the panelist has 2 minutes. All right. Sylvia, I see your hand is raised up.
Thank you. The chat box is not functional. Yeah. It's not enabled. Could this please be enabled? One of the technicians, please. Thank you.
The
okay,
host,
thank you.
The co-host, Adeola, please.
Okay, can the co-host please do that, or is it the host that has that privilege? The technical team, please help. Okay, the co-host, please help us activate the chat box, and so that we can make use of that in this very important conversation. So let me also reframe that each panelist has 7 minutes. 5 minutes into their conversations, my video will come back on. And on the dot of the 7 minutes, I will be asking them to please round off if they have not round off. Kavengo, I can see your hand, please.
Yes, please. Can you say something about the interpretation service, French, English, please?
Okay, all right. We do have interpretation services, and you're advised to please go to the interpretation button and please pick either of the languages that you would want. There's English, and I can see also French on the interpretation box. To set us rolling for this, let me mention and send in the apologies of Ambassador Kelapile, who is attending a G8 meeting, a General Assembly meeting, and we're cautiously assuming this would be because of the ongoing war, in quote, that is happening in Ukraine. We solidarize with our civil society counterparts and also civil society organizations in Ukraine. Our thoughts and our minds are with them while we find some meaningful solution to this unnecessary provocation that we have in Ukraine at this time. Again, our minds, our thoughts are with our fellow citizens in Ukraine. Having said that, let me now call on Ms. Kigmotsoto Nanasejo. My apologies if I've not pronounced these names very well. She's a social protection specialist and executive director, Marang Child Care Network. She will be talking to us for 7 minutes on the topic, social protection and food security in Botswana. Civil society reflection on progress in Botswana on how strengthening social policies can facilitate a socially just transition towards sustainable development. Ms. Sejo, you have our attention for 7 minutes. And on the dot of 5 minutes into your conversation, my video will come back. Is Madam Sejo on the call?
I think, Oyebisi, the person we have in place of that speaker is called Boitumelo.
Oh, okay. So I didn't get that brief.
Boitumelo, and I think she's inside this meeting. Boitumelo, please.
Okay, Boitumelo, please, we have your attention for 7 minutes. My apologies for not updating my agenda.
Good morning, everyone. Protocol observed. My name is Boitumelo Nkwe from Botswana. I would like to say that in Botswana, we largely depend on our revenue, largely depend on minerals. So, however, poverty still remains a major concern for the country. Also, existing research suggests that a third of the country's population survives below the poverty downturn line. However, government is committed to ensure that most vulnerable are protected. And also, government considers civil society organizations as critical partners in the development agenda. And then also government commits to working with civil society organizations on social issues, particularly those that affect children. This is in line with our vision of 2036 aspirations. And then we have, in Botswana, we have a lot of social assistance programs. We have 10 main state social assistance programs. We have those that are food-related programs and those that are cash-related programs. And these are destitute persons programs, orphan care program, community-based home care, primary and secondary school feeding programs, vulnerable groups feeding, remote area development program, old age pension scheme, Ipelecheng, and World War II veterans allowance. The orphan care program is guided by the short-term plan for action of orphans. That is from 1999 to 2001. And in this program is a universal coverage with eligibility open to all Botswana children under the age of 18 who do not have parents and lack access to basic necessities of life, including food, clothing, toiletry, and shelter. And then the benefits in this program include food basket, school fees, clothing, other educational costs, and psychosocial support. And then with the Destitute program, it's guided by the Destitute Person Policy, and its main objectives is to alleviate poverty. And the target population on these programs are all individuals, destitute individuals without assets, people with mental disabilities or physical disabilities, minor children without support, and those who are rendered helpless due to natural disasters or temporary hardship. This you will find with the Government of Botswana 2002. And then in terms of what do they get, the benefits include food baskets, cash components, shelter, funeral expenses in case somebody dies or passes on, school fees, and psychosocial support. And also we have the vulnerable group feeding program. The aim is to address the problem of hunger in schools and also for children under the age of 6 to 60 months. And then the feeding program in schools targets all primary school children and secondary school children. And then there's by December 2022, the level of food commodity supply to school was at 85%. And then the children are provided with 2 basic meals. This means breakfast, that is before they start their classes, and midday meals in all primary schools. And then for secondary schools, they are provided with breakfast as well and lunch. And then there's also the provision of blanket supplementary feeding for children aged 6 to 59 months. This is done under the Ministry of Health and Wellness. The children get food rations. And also we have a provision for food baskets to underweight children aged 6 to 59 months. And then we have provision of ready-to-use therapeutic food for children with acute malnutrition. And then also we have, Botswana has several cash-related programs. These are Universal Old Age Pension Scheme, War Veterans Pension, and Ipeleng Public Works. The Old Age Pension Scheme was introduced through a cabinet directive in 1996 to address the plight of vulnerable older persons who are aged 65 years or older. They get cash transfers monthly. And then the World War Veterans Pension was introduced in 1998 as a token of appreciation to World War II veterans for their efforts and sacrifice for saving the world from racist domination. And the benefits are monthly allowances. And then we also have the public works, which we normally label it Ipeleng in our own language. The aim is to provide short-term unemployment and relief through public works activities in local authorities. And going back to the other food-related program, we have the community home-based care. The community home-based care, its main objective is to provide comprehensive care services at home and at community level in order to physically, psychologically, socially, and spiritually to address the needs of terminally ill patients, including people living with HIV and AIDS and their families. And also the benefits include monthly baskets at a cost of 500 pula or 1,200 in instances of oral tube feeding. The benefits also include transport to medical facilities for checkups, and then psychosocial support, rehabilitation, and burial in instances where somebody passes on as well. And then one of the challenges, we'll say that only a few of the above programs have been evaluated for efficiency and effectiveness. So we don't have a lot of data to say that this one is working well or what. And then the other thing is that some of them do not have comprehensive policies and operational guidelines. And then in other programs, target groups and beneficiary eligibility criteria for some programs are not clearly defined. And then there is also a challenge on implementation of established criteria, which seems to be lax, and other areas, others will do certain things and in other areas will do certain things. And then there's also absence of effective monitoring and evaluation framework and lack of performance outcomes, apart from, like registering of numbers. And then the other thing is that no published information on research estimates of operational costs is available, for example, in the Open Care program. My concluding remarks is that Botswana programming for poor and vulnerable children excludes and excluded groups is comprehensive by African standards. So we can say by far we are better than most of the African nations. And then the other thing is that monitoring implementation of social protection programs, we need to monitor to ensure that resources are used as planned. And also we should also, like CSO should play a more proactive role by engaging with the right structures for the achievement of their mandate. And with all that, ladies and gentlemen, that is all that I had. Thank you very much. I'll wait for questions and comments.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Butumelo Nkwe, the Acting Executive Director of Merian Child Care Network. We appreciate your keeping to time and for sharing thoughts and insights on social protection and food security in Botswana. Can I please request that the host please let the chat box be enabled? The co-host is telling us that she's not able to do that. Sylvia, I can see your hand on.
Yes, thank you. It's just that Adiola is the co-host. Could Adiola unmute the chat box?
Yes, she has just the host.
Sorry?
She has just informed me that it is the host that can enable the chat box. She's not able to do the enabling for the chat box.
And who is the host, please?
I'm seeing ECA/VCAB as host. Would crave the person's indulgence to please help enable the chat box. Okay. So while we're at that, we'll move to the next presentation, and this presentation will be given by Mr. John Haguma, who is also a social protection expert and Deputy Director, Never Again Rwanda. He will be talking to us on social protection and food security. Socio-economic recovery remains uncertain, especially in food security. What role should social protection play? And where are the current policy windows for governments to strengthen their social protection systems? Mr. John Haguma, you have our attention for the next 7 minutes.
Good morning, dear moderator and all my colleagues.
Good morning.
Good morning, John. We can hear you.
Hello, John, can you hear us? We may have lost John, but while we're at that, can I also please again ask that the host help us enable the chat box? We would need the chat box for our conversations this morning. John, are you back? Oh, okay, we have the chat box enabled now. Thank you so much. Please tell us your name, your organization, and where you're joining us from. John, do we have you now? I think we have lost John. While I'm still trying to get hold of John, can I ask Celine Peron Bista to please be getting ready just in case John is not able to join us in another 1 minute. Selling Peron Bista, social protection specialist and chief technical advisor with the ILO. We'll just wait for 1 more minute to see whether John can still join us. Thank you, Bista, for coming to the rescue. John, are you back online?
OABC?
Yes,
I just talked to John.
Okay.
Had an issue with his connection. He's suggesting we go ahead with the next panelist.
Okay, thank you. And the next panelist is also ready, and she will be talking to us on the work of ILO to support African countries to establish universal social protection for all by 2030. And she would also be commenting on multi-stakeholder approaches to ensure sustainability, good practice, and accountability nationally and regionally. Selin Peron Bista is Chief Technical Advisor, Social Protection at the ILO. You have our attention for the next 7 minutes, please.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. OABC, and good morning, a very warm good morning to everyone. Thank you very much for inviting the ILO to participate in this meeting this morning. I will talk about some initiative we're currently implementing with the African countries, in partnership with the African countries. But before that, if you allow me to give back a bit of background and scene to this very important discussion on social protection. Indeed, we all know, because we all work on social protection, food security, we all know that social protection is a human right. Therefore, not having social protection is a denial of these human rights. But however, the pandemic that we've seen over the past 2 years really focused our attention on the gaps, shortcomings, and sometimes even failure of the social protection system. The number of people who were not able to access social protection benefits, I'm thinking here of the workers in the informal economy, but also the most vulnerable, those also affected by food insecurity, really shown the limitation of the social protection system. We need to strengthen them, and we need to strengthen them because the crisis also showed the great potential of the social protection system as mechanism for strengthening the solidarity at all levels across the society, but also across the countries. And if I may just recall one figure, in December 2020, the ILO estimated the gap for financing social protection. And at that time, it was estimated that worldwide we will need 3.8% additional GDP if we want to overcome these existing gaps in coverage of social protection. And this 3.8% in GDP worldwide translates into 11.5% of GDP in the low-income countries. And most of these low-income countries are also found in Africa. And this underinvestment in social protection is really one of the root causes that lead to the low coverage in Africa that were recently estimated by the ILO still at 83% of the population in Africa not benefiting of any social protection system. So with this situation, what can we do? There's really a call, an international call among all countries that we need to invest more in social protection. We need to invest more, also means that we need to invest better. We need a better articulation between the mobilization of domestic resources, and we also need what I was talking about, this solidarity. We need also to reinforce this global solidarity for financing social protection, as well as the other SDGs. We also need to finance better, to invest better in social protection, and this will mean that we need to increase the financing for social protection, but align with international standards of social protection. And those standards are those that you all know and you have implemented through the social protection system in your countries. The principle of solidarity, the principle of redistribution, the principle of equity, quality of services, reaching out the most vulnerable. It's very important that we focus on the international principles when we invest more in social protection. And we have countries that have shown that it's feasible, and not only feasible, but durable to invest more in social protection. Those countries, even in Africa, Algeria, South Africa, and I want here also to congratulate Rwanda on the great achievement in social health protection over the past decade. So it's possible and feasible to do it. How can we do it? Through a stronger partnership across the country, South-South cooperation, partnership also at the global level, better coordination among the development partner, international financing organization, as well as also in collaboration with the government, civil society, a social partner that is very at the core of the work of the ILO, the workers and employers representative. And here a few examples on how at ILO we apply those principles, and we promote those partnerships and learning and innovation. We have embarked in 2020, right at the moment of the outbreak of the COVID crisis, in a large project, global project funded by the European Union in partnership with UNICEF and the Global Coalition on Social Protection Floor, the civil society, to support 24 countries in strengthening their system and also their financing for social protection. And among these 24 countries, 13 countries are in Africa. In ILO as well, this program is part of the ILO Global Flagship Program on social protection. It's again another initiative that brings together government, social partners, civil society, and all the UN agencies, IFI. We're working in 50 countries worldwide, and 26 countries are in Africa as well. And we are, through this program, aiming at mobilizing 160 million to support the development of the social protection system in Africa. And last but not least, I take the opportunity that yesterday our Director General, Guy Ryder, in presence of very high level participation heads of states in Geneva and the Secretary General of the UN, closed the Global Forum for a call for action for a human-centered recovery. And this call for action launched the Global Accelerator for Jobs and Social Protection. It's a new initiative among all the UN countries, UN development partners, international financing institution, to precisely look at how we can create more jobs, how we can strengthen the social protection system, and ensure that we mobilize durable financing for achieving the SDGs and those objectives of social protection. Mr. Chair, I will close here. I hope I stayed within my 7 minutes, and I'm available to answer to question and answer. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Celine. You stayed within the 7 minutes, and thank you for talking to us about the work, the good work ILO is doing around social protection across the world. Sylvia, I can see your hand again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, Celine. It would be great if the slides that I think Valerie sent through could be shared later on with the information that you've given, and any additional material such as you just mentioned, that Guy Ryder announced the Global Accelerator, because you've given us a tremendous amount of really helpful information that we would like to incorporate in our report back. So if there's any way those slides can be circulated to the participants, that would be great. I just want to thank you again and pass our messages to Valerie, who I think isn't very well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much,
Sylvia. And now I think John Aguma is ready for us. John Aguma is the Deputy Director, Never Again Rwanda, and he is a social protection expert. He will be talking to us on social protection and food security, looking at the role government should be playing to strengthen their social protection systems. John Aguma, you have our attention for the next 7 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. I'm going to start from an angle where I really believe that there's a close relationship between social protection and food security. And social protection can promote food security by, first of all, stabilizing those incomes. What do I mean with this? I look at the mitigating seasonal stress, managing risk, and ensuring against those shocks. 2, raising incomes. How? By promoting agriculture or enhancing rural livelihoods. And 3, enhancing social justice through empowering poor farmers, pastoralists, and landless laborers. I'm of the view that we should have a comprehensive approach to social protection that will achieve sustainable food security by combining interventions that stabilize income, food production, with those that raise income of food production and are designed and delivered in ways that enhance social protection. I'm of the view that we should start looking at shock responsive social protection as opposed to how businesses were done before. And I want to share with you the research that Never Again Rwanda conducted to give you a hint of what our findings were. And this research was carried out by Never Again Rwanda in 2021. The title was The Social Protection Response and Recovery Plan to the COVID-19 Pandemic in Rwanda, a midterm performance assessment, which was done between April to December 2020. Now in our findings, because we're looking at the effectiveness of the response plan, as far as looking at the lens of quantity of stroke amount of the support delivered under 3 components. So one component was immediate relief, response, economic recovery, and accompanying measures. And in component A, the immediate relief response, we looked at classic public works. This is under LODA or Vision 2020 Umrenje program, expanded public works, direct income transfer, nutrition sensitive direct support, food distribution, and emergency cash transfers. Component B, we looked at economic recovery responses. Those labor intensive projects, which is commonly known as HIMO, productive asset transfer, financial services, provision of toolkits. Component C, we looked at accompanying measures, that is access to health, access to shelter with clean toilets, access to education, usefulness of the support, inclusiveness of the support. Gaps, we discovered gaps in and challenges around the design and implementation of the COVID-19 social protection recovery and recovery plan. First one was a response that was not inclusive enough. 2, centrally driven planning and implementation. 3, a low and weak involvement of non-state actors in the design and monitoring of the response. 3, severe underfunding. A low awareness amongst the public and local government officials of the response and its components. Difficulty mediating between citizen participation and saving lives. And consented deductions from beneficiary wages and cash transfers by local leaders. Now, based on the major challenges and gaps identified above, the assessment proposes the following recommendations to inform the implementation of the next stages of the COVID-19 social protection responses and recovery plan. We looked at Minaloc and LODA. We suggested that they conduct a needs assessment and constitute a database of formal sector employees who lost their safety nets as a result of the COVID-19 mitigation measures. And 2, adjust the current response to integrate the needs of other people who fell into severe vulnerabilities but were not considered in the initial response plan. And 3, to adjust the current response to give districts
Hello, John, can you hear us? Hello, John. I think we lost John. Can the room confirm that you can hear me? I think we lost John again.
Yeah, we can hear you very well, moderator.
Okay, thank you,
yeah.
Kabengo. I think we lost John, and he's only 2 minutes into to conclude his presentation. While we're still waiting for John, let me note that the chat box is now working, and that we can now drop our questions. And my colleague Angelique would coordinate this with me. Dauda, can you hear me? I think we lost John, but can you hear me, Dauda? Dauda is saying he can't get any sound. Please confirm that you can hear me loud and clear. Angelique will be working with me. Angelique Cabeza will be working with me to coordinate the Q&A from the chat box. So if you have any question for our presenters so far, then yes, John's paper is being shared on the screen at the moment. It's a Word version. I'm sure all participants would have access to all these presentations via their email, but it is being presented at the moment, and it's in Word format. While we're still trying to wait for John, can I ask that if you have any question for Ms. Sejo, or you have any for Celine, or any also for John, please type them in the question and answer in the chat box now, so that we can pick that up and we can then relay it to any of the panelists. We have heard from 3 panelists so far. Unfortunately, we lost John into his presentation, but we've heard about how social protection is being managed in Botswana and the gaps that has been identified by Ms. Sejo. We do also have heard from John. He was making his presentation around social protection and its importance, and how we can again use that to jumpstart security for our food system. We heard from ILO the work they're doing in countries and how they are providing support, including a pronouncement that was made yesterday at the high level by the ILO. Please, if you have any question, comments, insight that you would like to share with us, again, please put in the chat box so that we can quickly move to the next session. Remember that after the Q&A, we will be discussing best practices in mitigating the negative impacts of COVID-19. And then we'll also talk about the VNR, focusing on Togo. We'll look at the successes and challenges for social protection and food security from the Togo perspective. And after that, we'll talk about the status of food insecurity in Africa. And then we'll take questions and answers. Someone is saying, can presenters comment on the points raised by Celine that social protection be based on the international principles and the gaps on financing, and any response on the idea of the global accelerator? Yes. Can we have comments from the presenters on this? Celine, do you want to share some more thoughts on this? I think we still can't find John. Ms. Sejo, are you still online? Do you want to also provide some thoughts on this? Social protection should be based on international principles, and that the gaps, and also the person that has posted this question will also like you to talk on the gaps on financing, including how best to respond to the idea of global accelerator. Do we still have Celine on the call? And yes, Celine, do you want to quickly speak to this in a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe I can provide a bit more information in 1 minute because it will be interesting, in fact, to hear about reaction from the other presenters and in the chat, if any. What we mean by the international principles is the United Nations as well as the International Labour Organization being one of the normative organizations together with WHO as well. The members set a number of international text documents. In ILO, we call them convention recommendation. In UN, we talk about treaties. And those documents really represent a consensus among all the countries, all the members of the United Nations. And for the ILO, this also represents a consensus among the government, the representative of workers and employers. And a number of instruments, international instruments, have been adopted along the years. We have the flagship Convention on Social Security, which is called the Minimum Standards of Social Security, that already since the 1952 embeds a number of very sound principles, especially on transparency, good governance, extension of coverage. But when we really talk about this problematic of extension of coverage, which is at the core of all the discussion these days, we have a more recent instrument, the recommendation 202 on social protection floor, that really calls and set some guidelines for implementing the universal social protection that will achieve, that will reach all in the country with 4 basic guarantees. Basic guarantees of income security and social protection for all children, a basic guarantee of income security, social protection, based access to essential services for the working age population, whatever is our capacity to work. So this also includes social protection for workers with or person with disability. The same guarantees goes also for the elderly, and a more transversal across the age group that follows the life cycle is also a guarantee for universal healthcare and access to basic health services. Beside these 4 guarantees, the recommendation 202 on social protection flows includes 19 principles on how to set a sound, robust, effective, universal, comprehensive, adequate, transparent, well-governed social protection system. So it's really a source of inspiration when we design the social protection systems to look at those international principles that have been recognized and so far are still the valuable principles that guide the development of social protection. So that was just the link with what we mean by the international principle on social protection. I'm happy to hear more reaction that will probably also, if needed, additional answers on my side. Thank you.
Again, thank you so much, Celine, for discussing the recommendations 202 with us and also the 19 principles. John, do we have John back on the call so that we can take him for the next 2 minutes? And then, yes, John, please, you have your 2 minutes back, and please, let's skip to that so that we can move to the session. Welcome back.
I'm sorry for the inconvenience, moderator.
That's fine.
Yes, as I was saying, we came up with some recommendations that, for example, Minaloc and LODA, they conduct a needs assessment. I talked about carrying out monitoring exercise to ensure that LODA leaders follow the instructions received from the central government. They consider scaling up social protection schemes to include households in upper of the categories affected by the COVID-19 mitigation measures. The Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, Minaloc, PSF, that's the private sector federation, and LODA, we recommend that they mobilize more funds to support vulnerable individuals who are not yet included in this, to receive the support, innovatively design and adapt existing job creation endeavors that would absorb affected people, undertake planning and budgeting ahead of time for logistics, feasibility studies, and procurement procedures. For Minaloc, LODA, and the civil society organizations, we the findings and recommendations are that they raise public awareness on the content of the COVID-19 social protection response, strongly sensitize citizens to embrace the culture of saving so that they are protected in cases of emergencies, put in place parasocial workers to support the raising awareness. The Ministry of Information Technology with strengthening efforts aimed at increasing accessibility and affordability of information through technological tools, platforms to the public to enable community members to engage in virtual meetings. The Minister of Agriculture recommended that they speed up the process of establishing storage facilities and silos for foodstuffs at the district or sector level to enable easy distribution in the case of emergencies. Enhance existing cold chain storage facilities to be able to handle perishable produce. To Minaloc, they should readjust the current response to integrate mental health as an integral component to the Midecofin Ministry to take advantage of the progressive national electrification efforts as per NST1. These were our recommendations. And also to speed up the implementation of Smart Classrooms program to enable both students and teaching staff to go digital. Thank you, moderator.
Yes, thank you so much, John, for speeding us through those recommendations. And let me also flag what excites me about those recommendations is those around affordability and accessibility of technology, especially the internet. And the Alliance for Affordable Internet have also added meaningful connectivity to this, so which means that you are able to afford the technology to use, and also you're able to connect to 4G internet. Thanks for that very interesting presentation and also your recommendations. To Celine, someone on the chat box is saying, if you can, Celine, this is for you. They're saying if you can put anything in the chat about the Global Accelerator and comment on its relevance for Africa to fill gaps in social protection coverage, it will be great. Yes, it will be great to have something in the chat by you telling us about the Global Accelerator and its relevance to Africa. So we'll be looking forward to your chat, Celine, and thank you so much for that. Let me thank all my three panelists for sharing their wisdom and insight on social protection. And also now to say that I do not know whether there's any question for either Ms. Sergio or John at this point, so that we can manage our time so well. Please put those questions in the chat box, and we can then move to the next session. Of course, in the chat box, there's a link already sent by Celine for your kind attention. Please note also that we still have the translation.
The chat don't work for the fancy question, please.
Sorry, who is this? Am I protected as the chair? Am I protected? Who is
You are, yes, you are, Chair.
Okay, if it's a question, please, can you just type it in the chat box? I can see your hand. iPhone the.
Oui, on a écrit dans le chat. We have written in the chat, but the French chat don't work.
The French chat doesn't work. Okay, so I would allow you to quickly talk for 1 minute. Please go ahead for 1 minute, please. I can see your hand raised up.
Nous avons essayé de poster nos questions en chat français, mais ça ne passait pas. Donc, très rapidement, moi, j'ai une question concernant la présentation de l'OIT et les premiers intervenants, parce que aujourd'hui, en Afrique, nous avons 3 paramètres.
Yes, please, quickly go ahead.
C'est bon? OK, donc le premier paramètre, c'est le paramètre de la jeunesse. Nous avons un continent tout à fait jeune. Donc, la question de l'employabilité. Le deuxième paramètre, c'est la sécurité. Le troisième paramètre, c'est la question du changement climatique. En réalité, aujourd'hui, moi, la question que je voudrais poser, quelles sont les orientations ou recommandations stratégiques qui devraient s'imposer en réalité pour cette nouvelle donne, pour ne pas me poser la parole. Merci.
Okay, thank you so much. Celine, I hope you got the questions. Do you want to quickly hit that in 1 minute?
Mr. Chair, should I respond in French for our colleagues?
Yes, please, if if you're comfortable with that.
Merci beaucoup pour la question. Je n'arriverai pas à répondre à cette question très ambitieuse en 1 minute, mais je commence à vous partager dans le chat des références sur le Global Accelerator, sur l'accélérateur mondial. Et comme monsieur, vous mentionnez les problèmes d'emploi pour les jeunes, les problèmes de transition vers l'économie verte et les problèmes de sécurité. Pour avoir lu les documents sur cet accélérateur mondial, ils essayent de trouver des réponses à tous ces paradigmes qui peuvent effectivement être adressés à travers des politiques à la fois de protection sociale et d'emploi mieux intégrés. Dans l'accélérateur mondial, un accent très important est mis sur les jeunes, la formation des jeunes, s'assurer qu'on ne les retrouve pas systématiquement dans les emplois de l'économie informelle, mais également dans des emplois qualifiés et qualifiants. Et cet accélérateur mondial fait le lien triangulaire avec également la transition juste, comme elle a été retenue par les mandants de l'OIT, on l'appelle la transition juste, pour s'assurer que dans cette transition vers une économie plus verte pour s'adapter aux défis du changement climatique, personne n'est laissé en arrière et que à nouveau les emplois, les qualifications et les systèmes de protection sociale, toutes ces politiques soient adaptées pour effectivement accompagner au mieux les gens dans cette transition. Malheureusement, le temps est trop court pour rentrer plus en détail. Je vais essayer de partager le maximum d'informations dans le chat et également avec les organisateurs qui pourront vous faire circuler ensuite ces documents. Merci.
Yes, thank you so much, Celine. And we are not doing too well with time now, so we'll have to move to the next session. Please, again, if you have any question, let's put the question in the chat box. Now we'll move to the next session, and this time we'll be talking about best practices in mitigating the negative impact of COVID-19. We will be listening to Mupiganyi Apollinaire. Please forgive me if I've not pronounced this name very well. He is the Executive Director of Transparency International in Rwanda. You have our attention for the next 7 minutes.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning, good days. There are some who started the afternoon. As introduced by the moderator, my name is Apollinaire Mupiganyi. I'm the Executive Director of Transparency International Rwanda. I'm trying to share the screen if my presentation, my short slides can be visible. I'm trying to see. But for the sake of time, I can go on. I saw even others did not screen their presentation. For the sake of time, the topic I was requested to discuss on is the COVID-19 effects on vulnerable categories, and of course, looking to the experience of Rwanda. As a starting point, just a very few words about our country. After 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, Rwanda socio-economic system was completely destroyed. This is very known. And the leaders took strong measures of rebuilding the country, especially trying to not leaving anyone behind, especially those more affected category, economically affected category, and Rwanda has put in place a very robust national system of social protection, starting 2011. And of course, there were the national social protection system was built on the Rwandan homegrown solutions known as Ubudehe. So this is a local jargon. And this national social protection system is built on 3 pillars. My colleague from Never Again mentioned them, but we have one first pillar which include the public works. Public works involves those who are economically vulnerable but who can work. The other pillar is the direct support, which is dedicated to those who can't, who are really physically and economically capable to produce. So the direct support is a lump sum that is provided to those category. And of course, the other pillar is the financial services, which is again provided to the category to have income generating revenues. And this helped really to reduce poverty in Rwanda, as the data from National Institute for Statistics show. The extreme poverty decreased from 40% 2001 to 16% in 2016. This is a tremendous improvement, while the poverty level decreased from 58% to 38%. So those are the achievements that are put on the credit of social protection system in Rwanda. But when the COVID-19 came, we are aware that the system, economic system, even social, were heavily affected. But those living in the socio-economically vulnerability were more affected than other categories. And unfortunately, they were not probably considered at the same level as those who are in the business community, who have a strong voice to advocate for themselves. Transparency International Rwanda conducted an assessment in 2020 to analyze the effects of COVID on vulnerable groups. And among the findings, we saw that those, of course, who are in extreme poverty, who struggle to eat or even do not have food, the percentage increased from 3% to 27%. While those who were in the category, again, vulnerable category, who could eat once, the percentage was high before the COVID. Before the COVID, the percentage was on 51%, but during the COVID, the numbers increased, both on public works and, of course, financial services. During the COVID, the government of Rwanda activated, of course, a holistic assistance machinery, which combined the existing social protection schemes, but it added as well the other homegrown solutions built on mutual assistance, which involved other partners, private sector, and the civil society. So government provided additional assistance for emergency, but civil society and the private sector as well came on board and provided their contribution. I shared my presentation with the organizers. I think they will share what we shared. But in this joint effort, Transparency International Rwanda, for example, managed to support 250 beneficiaries by providing an average of 100,000 euro to those affected people. We provided additional assistances at the civil society and the private sector, as it is known here in Rwanda. But again, we did not divert from our core mission, which is accountability. So we are aware that accountability, if it's not protected and of course ensured, all those efforts could not lead to any good results. So this is why TR Rwanda empowered our volunteers by providing them some technical tools, iPhone, to report corruption. We were in a lockdown, but the life of a citizen were continuing. So accountability was on top of our key priorities to monitor what the government is doing, though there was a collective action in this national struggle. So as never again, we conduct some specific researches on the social protection program, which included some social accountability tools, tracking how the money is flowing to the vulnerable groups, the delays, and of course, the risk of corruption of those who are entitled to provide assistance to the vulnerable groups. In general, we saw that the government or duty bearers have really performed at the satisfaction of the citizens, but we identified some loopholes, especially those who were close to the citizens. To conclude, the success for Rwanda in COVID-19 response was built on robust social protection, proved machinery, the policies and institutions, as my colleague from Never Again mentioned. Media and the civil society are strategic partners, both during the emergency assistance, but also as watchdogs when there is any breach of accountability. In Rwanda, even in the other countries, vulnerable categories heavily endured effects of lack of income, poor access to basic needs, and the psychological trauma during the COVID pandemic. It is therefore very important to design a special program to help them to recover from the COVID negative effects, which worsen their living conditions. I thank you for your attention. I think I do hope that I did not misuse the time allocated to me, but again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Apollonia, for using your time so well. We appreciate your thoughts on social accountability within the COVID-19 support given by the government of Rwanda. And again, to give us a perspective from Togo for the next 7 minutes, where we'll be listening to successes and challenges for social protection and food security, I have Mr. Akibode Nelson, Director de la Coopération et des Affaires Humanitaires from LANPC. Mr. Nelson, I hope my French is good. You have my attention for the next 7 minutes.
Merci. Tout à fait. Merci beaucoup. Je voudrais... vous m'entendez? Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui, oui, nous t'entendons.
Ah, mais merci beaucoup.
Oui.
C'est parce que la technique voulait me faire défaut ici. Alors, je voudrais à l'entame dire un grand merci aux organisateurs de cet panel qui, je viens de le constater, que c'est en même temps une plateforme à chaud pour échange d'expériences et de leçons. Alors, le thème du travail a un très grand sens pour nous au Togo sur ces défis pour la protection sociale et la sécurité alimentaire. Alors, nous avions présenté quelques informations, quelques données. Je ne sais pas si c'est projeté, si c'est partagé, je ne pense pas. Alors, comme vous le savez, le Togo est un pays situé en Afrique de
Hello, Nelson, are you there? I think we lost.
Je vous entends.
Okay, oui.
Ça va maintenant? Voilà, donc je disais le taux de pauvreté est autour de 45,5%. Le taux de croissance de la population est de 2,84%, avec une population aujourd'hui de 8 100 000. Vous m'entendez? Alors, je vais dire en termes de protection sociale, ça passe? Allô? Allô? OK, merci. Et donc, je disais que pour ce qui est du succès, le gouvernement s'emploie avec les partenaires et pour aboutir à la fin zéro, il faut reconnaître qu'il y a des interventions prioritaires qui sont réalisées avec, bien sûr, des projections d'ici 2030. Et parmi ces priorités sont retenues la valorisation des productions végétales, animales et halieutiques, la gestion durable des ressources naturelles et l'environnement, c'est-à-dire la prise en compte de l'impact des changements climatiques. Là, j'ai sélectionné quelques images que vous voyez là où vraiment du travail est en train d'être fait. Le gouvernement s'emploie à minimiser, à endiguer le cercle de la pauvreté, avec bien sûr l'appui des partenaires. En termes de succès également, nous pouvons retenir la promotion de la maîtrise de l'eau et de l'hydraulique villageoise à but multiple. Et le taux national de décès en eau potable est d'environ de 70%. Alors, la promotion, tout comme succès, la promotion de l'alimentation scolaire durable, de la santé, de la nutrition, y compris l'éducation nutritionnelle et des initiatives de transfert monétaire aux couches vulnérables. Nous avons quelques informations là, bien sûr, avec les impacts et l'efficacité. Nous allons voir qu'il y a une couverture sanitaire de tous les fonctionnaires du public avec leur ayant droit qui dépasse largement 1,2 million Togolais qui bénéficient de cette couverture sanitaire que nous appelons ici INAM, qui s'améliore de jour en jour. Il y a également la mise en place d'un fonds national de finances inclusives depuis 2014 avec des bénéficiaires dont les femmes qui s'élèvent à près d'1,7 million de bénéficiaires. Et la mise en place de programmes de prise en charge gratuit de la femme enceinte au Togo avec près de 7 milliards de francs CFA. Alors, je pourrais dire que toutes ces réalisations pour le gouvernement permettent d'avoir une lisibilité ou une lecture qui fait chuter en point le taux de pauvreté. Et donc, vous allez voir que de 2006 à 2020, ce taux de pauvreté a chuté de plus de, je ne sais pas, près de 14 points. Alors, il y a des défis. Ça, il faut le reconnaître avec la démographie galopante, des postes de vulnérabilité extrême de pauvreté. Il y a le problème de chômage, de forte proportion de groupes vulnérables, de faible rendement agricole lié à la survenue des catastrophes et des sécheresses, de faible taux de petite transformation des produits agricoles, des pertes post-récolte estimées à près de 30% et faible accès aux moyens de production, au système de crédit et insuffisant d'accès au marché à cause de l'enclavement. Alors, je veux bien reconnaître toujours dans ces défis-là, concernant l'éducation, il y a vraiment la construction, la réhabilitation aussi des infrastructures. Vous allez voir, à chaque fois, le Togo procède à l'exercice du cadre harmonisé et qui nous permet d'avoir une idée des couches vulnérables. Alors, voilà à peu près, Monsieur le Président de séance ou Chairman, ce que j'ai préparé, que j'ai présenté juste en filigrane concernant le Togo. Comme j'avoue qu'il y a plus que ça, mais le temps qui nous est imparti ne me permet pas de dérouler l'essentiel. Je voudrais une fois encore réitérer toute ma reconnaissance pour cette initiative et je voudrais bien sûr que de façon périodique, que cela se fasse de temps en temps. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akibode. Of course, this kind of meetings will continue to happen so that we can continue to share insights and wisdom on how collectively we can use social protection to achieve food security. To set us on the last presentation for today will be Ms. Benita Stephen Chikaya, Senior Social Policy Officer, Food and Agricultural Organization. She's Program Lead for Social Protection in Africa. And she'll be talking to us about status of food insecurity in Africa, what needs to be done to ensure that social protection programs and systems are in place, and also to respond to the impact of COVID-19. Ms. Chikaya, you have our attention for the next 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues, distinguished guests, all protocol observed. It's really a pleasure for us to be with you today for this side event to discuss this important topic on how we can extend social protection to end food insecurity. And of course, you all know that one of the greatest impacts of COVID-19 on population, especially the most vulnerable ones, beyond the health impact, was the food security and its consequences on the increase of the number of hungry. For FAO, social protection is a strategic program area which focuses mainly on interventions, which objectives are to reduce social and economic risk and vulnerability, and also to alleviate extreme poverty and deprivation. So this can include social assistance such as publicly provided cash or in-kind transfers, and labor market protection such as unemployment benefits, the building of skills, and the training of workers. So it's very important to underscore that it's imperative to tailor social protection policies to the specific needs of individual countries, given the specificity, and especially in Africa, where we have more than 80% of the population lacking access to social protection benefits of any kind. So therefore, in the sub-Saharan Africa region, there's a general worsening of acute food insecurity even prior to COVID-19. In the last 10 years, for instance, the frequency and intensity of conflict, climate variability and extremes, economic slowdowns and downturns have really increased and are undermining food security and nutrition around the world globally, and particularly in Africa. So especially low and middle income countries, because of the negative impact of food security and nutrition, they are the greatest hit, and they carry the biggest burden of the world's population, and of course of the undernourished and food insecure. So I think it's time now to rethink and reorient African agri-food systems. The scale of achievements is remarkable, however, much remains to be done. And although there are challenges that still persist and new and interlinked threats appear, there is still a multitude of opportunities that are available to raise productivity, provide affordable and healthy diets, create decent and profitable employment, strengthen the resilience of farmers and other food system actors. So for the food systems to tackle this triple challenge successfully, policymakers must identify pathways for optimizing the synergies and managing the trade-offs. So it will be important, for instance, to adjust their institutional frameworks, create an innovative and inclusive mix of policies. So agri-food systems are central to the livelihoods of people, and in particular, the ones living among the extreme poor. And currently we are at 3 billion people unable to afford a healthy diet. So this inequality with people from moderate to extreme poverty living in rural areas must really be alleviated. So we have seen that there is evidence that social protection can be an important strategy for poverty reduction. It can also enhance food security and nutrition by building resilience, as well as natural resource management and climate change adaptation, which contribute to the broader inclusive growth. Social protection can also help in improving physical and economic access to healthy diets by facilitating the process of economic inclusion of the poorest and the most marginalized, such as women, youth, migrants, indigenous population. And this can help them their transition to a sustainable and potentially alternative livelihood. It is therefore key to ensure that the resilience of workers of agri-food systems in case of shocks, especially climate-related ones, affecting the livelihoods. FAO therefore considers it essential to extend the coverage of adequate social protection to the sectors of agriculture, fisheries, forestry, pastoralism, and with its related policies and programs. Food systems approach provides us with an opportunity. However, we also need to understand more in detail the interaction with social protection systems, including knowing the drivers and trade-offs to adjust the design and implementation of the social protection systems. For instance, we can see that the ideal nutritional status cannot be achieved without consuming a healthy diet for optimal health. Social protection interventions directly contribute to improving diets by providing, for instance, food through food transfer, school feeding programs that can facilitate access to healthcare through conditional cash transfers that encourage the use of health services or enable the households access items such as hygiene and clean water. Through this objective, FAO has an ongoing research project with the University of the Western Cape in South Africa. There's also a consortium on social protection for food security transformation within the USP 2030 on social protection that has been created jointly with WFP, ILO, UNICEF, and the World Bank. And lastly, as we support the implementation of national pathways towards food system transformation in Africa, we will learn important lessons as guidance. I would like to re-emphasize that social protection plays really an important and vital role in supporting food insecure people, and well-designed and well-implemented social protection programs can highly contribute to addressing the causes of food insecurity. But we also must be mindful that social protection cannot solve all the causes of food insecurity and its impact on nutrition on its own. Achieving food security in the short term requires not only household or individual access to food, but also linkages to basic healthcare services, clean water and sanitation, and appropriate information, education and skills training to ensure that food will be utilized effectively in safe and wholesome daily diets for nutritional health and well-being. Finally, FAO considers that social protection as being a critical part of the attainment of the SDGs 1, 2, 8, and 10 towards eradicating poverty, hunger, and inequalities is a corporate priority which acknowledges in supporting countries to realize the right to food and the right to social protection, as well as its role in the social protection floors. So I think the key takeaways really is to note that Africa is not on track to meet the food security and nutrition targets for the SDG 2. And after a long period of improvement between 2000 and 2013, hunger has worsened, unfortunately, and most of this deterioration occurred between 2019 and 2020. Of the 2.37 billion people facing moderate or severe food insecurity, 1/3 are unfortunately found in Africa. Conflict, climate variability, and extremes, economic slowdowns, downturns are really the key drivers of food insecurity in Africa. And by disrupting economic and livelihood activities, COVID-19 has led to a dramatic economic downturn in Africa and contributed to worsening the food security situation. Evidence generated in the last decade has shown that social protection can have not only a protective and preventative impact, such as reduction in food insecurity and all, but also productive impacts, such as the increase in livelihood through income and greater use of agriculture assets, inputs, livestock, off-farm income, etc. In the short term, countries need to provide humanitarian assistance and effective social protection programs to effectively improve the food security and nutrition. And lastly, countries will need to invest in agriculture and related sectors. This has been said before, and we would like to repeat this again because it's an imperative. We need to reduce those vulnerabilities and build capacities in order to withstand shocks from climate change and conflicts and overturn the economic slowdowns. FAO has identified social protection as being critical, as I mentioned before, for the attainment of SDG 1, 8, and 10. It is a corporate priority, and we do acknowledge that its role in supporting countries is really the pathway to realize the right to food and the right to social protection.
Thank you,
FAO has articulated this in its strategic framework 2231, which focuses on the transformation to more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable agri-food system for better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life, leaving no one behind.
Yes,
thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Chikaya, and thank you for reminding us that social protection cannot solve all the food security program, food insecurity problem that we have today. We're now 9 minutes to end this session, and now we have to move as fast as we could. But are there critical questions you'd like to ask my two panelists so that we can then quickly move to the declaration and then end the session by 9:30 Nigerian time on the dot and 10:30 Kigali time? Any burning questions? Please put them in the chat box. While we're doing that, can I ask that the draft outcome now be presented by Simon Nhongo, who is the chairman of the APSP board, and to also add to that his closing remarks. Simon, please, you would have our attention for the next 5 minutes so that we can round up by 9:30 on the dot, and maybe take 1 or 2 questions just in case we have those. Is Simon on the call? Do we have Simon Nhongo, chairman APSP on the board, or APSP board on the call? My apologies.
Yeah, he's there. He's there.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please, you have our attention for the next 5 minutes so that we can end by 9:30 on the dot. I trust your powers to help us achieve this objective. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the limited time, I'm going to have to rush through the final recommendations of this session. I'm trying to share the document. Let's see. Can it be viewed by everyone else? Hello?
Hi, we can't see the document yet, Simon.
Okay.
Angelique, could you help, please?
Host has disabled my screen sharing. May it be.
Can the host please help us share the declaration if she has it, please?
Angelique, can you help out?
Okay, there you go.
Oh, it's now on. Okay. Ooh, not the one. Sorry.
Angelique, can you share the PowerPoint, please? That I sent? Not this one, the PowerPoint.
No, this is the one I would like to share.
Oh, okay.
I can't share this.
Can it be seen?
Can you just walk us through directly? So because we're losing time now, we have 6 more minutes.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chairman, we call on all African governments to fulfill their fundamental social protection and food and nutrition commitments enshrined in these frameworks, which are essential for better living standards of their people. In this connection, extending sustainable and accountable social protection programs is a vital pillar of resilience in the face of food scarcity and the challenging times occasioned by conflict, climate-related emergencies, and aftershocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. We call on the African governments to ratify the AU Protocol on the rights of citizens to social protection, as well as fully incorporate these commitments into national legislation and provide the requisite budgetary allocations as a priority for sustainable COVID-19 recovery. We further call on all African governments to extend social protection coverage and enhance food security as a necessary prerequisite for the realization of Agenda 2063 and the 2030 agenda, mindful of the urgency to overcome interlinked challenges of disease burden, poor basic infrastructure, and social services, plus inadequate healthcare and services, poor access to basic education and training, high illiteracy rates, gender inequality, youth marginalization, and political instability in some of our countries. We therefore call on African governments to ensure an effective and sustainable COVID-19 recovery, to undertake as top priorities the following concrete recommendations. They should enact legislation on social protection and food security for all, and provide programs and adequate budgetary allocation to extend social protection coverage and ensure affordable access to a healthy diet and food security. Also ensure adequate technical and resource allocation for implementation of national legislation and policies to tackle poverty in all its forms, promote social inclusion, full and productive employment and decent work, accessible education for all without discrimination, health services, and social services. The processes should reach those previously left behind, including persons with disabilities, women, children, youth, indigenous peoples, and other persons who are vulnerable to violence and multiple or aggravated forms of discrimination. Make a strong commitment to engage and include civil society in all its diversity, including faith-based organizations or groups, women, youth, older persons, persons with disabilities, and ethnic minorities in the design and implementation of adaptive, shock-responsive social protection systems that ensure the progressive realization of full coverage is comprehensive and adequate, as well as involve civil society to support accountability as well as transparency. Next, we call all development partners to integrate in their development agenda for COVID-19 recovery, technical and financial support to extending social protection coverage in Africa and enhancing food security at the national as well as regional level, and adopt available best practice examples from elsewhere in the world of multi-stakeholder collaboration, including civil society, grassroots organizations, trade unions, UN agencies, governments, and the private sector. We recommend those African countries that have made strides, or rather, we commend those African countries that have made strides towards the realization of these commitments to the 2030 SDG goals and the 2063 agenda, and recommend increased peer learning among and between African countries to make progress towards the full realization of the integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa we all crave for. Finally, call on African governments to commit to involving civil society in the report back on progress in 2023 to the 9th Forum and to successive high-level political forums through their voluntary national reports. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I tried my best to squeeze my presentation into the time available. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ihongo, and thanks for making my life easier. We have only 5 minutes more to go. And let me mention that if you have any comments, suggestions on the declaration, please ensure that you send both Martin and I've sent an email on the chat box. Please ensure that you provide your feedback to Martin and also to Abel via their email addresses by the 28th of February. Again, by the 28th of February, we would welcome your comments, your recommendations on the draft declaration presented by Ihongo. Please send that to Martin and Abel by 28th of February 2022. Let me again thank all the panelists and thank again AFSP, GCAP, and also our colleagues from the Rwanda Civil Society platform for putting this conversation together. It's been an interesting night. 2 conversations on social protection, how we can ensure that we use this to fill the gap that we're seeing in food insecurity. Someone is asking that we should please send a copy of the declaration. Of course, yes, a copy of the declaration to all participants on the call. And once again, let me thank you. Sorry, someone is jamming me. Okay, so let's take them once again. We would expect that by February 28th, you please share your thoughts on the recommendations, which we hope will be circulated widely to all critical stakeholders. We want to thank the interpreters and also our UNECA colleagues for the background support that they have given to us. Thanks to the host and the co-host for providing this technical support to us. Thanks to Angelique Cabrera for also supporting me on this, and to Sylvia for always whipping me back in line to ensure that I'm able to capture everything. It's been a delight to anchor this. I wish you may Africa survive. Again, our thoughts are with our friends and colleagues and brothers in Ukraine. May this war never happen. And may we find peace in all that. All the best for the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Do we need to do a screenshot of our, can we do videos and do screenshots? Yes, let's quickly take some.
Thank you so much.
Can we do a
Thank you,
screenshot?
Angelique, for the support. I appreciate the background support.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, let's have
Thank
a
you,
video
Sylvia.
so that we can take a screen grab. Let's have a
Wow.
video.
Thanks very much, Sylvia.
Yes,
BC qui a su gérer Céline.
Merci Nelson. Merci Nelson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tu as fait un travail.
Thank you, Ingo.
Thank you, everyone.
Been
Thank
terrific.
you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are we having the screenshot?
Yes, is someone taking this?
I turned on my video, but I can't see anyone else.
Oh,
okay.
Where's Nongo? Right.
I can't turn on my video.
we would be shut off in 1 minute. So bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Lovely. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Oyebisi.